the peace of mind, financial security, and justice you deserve.
If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, contact SWMW Law for a complimentary, no-obligation consultation today.
SWMW, helping you and those you love.
My daughter is studying to be a dentist, and she gave me advice. She said, Dad, go pro with Crest Pro Health.
4 out of 5 dentists confirm these Pro Health products helped maintain a professional clean. Go pro with Crest Pro Health.
Crest Pro Health really brought my mouth to the next level.
Chased, adored, and 20 years after her death, CNN searches for the truth.
Did you find any indication that the princess and Dodi were murdered?
Diana chasing the fairy tale, Sunday night at 9.
Okay, President Trump just a few minutes ago issued a new attack, some new criticism of the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And then very shortly after that, he may not have known, the Majority Leader praised the administration. It came during a breakfast speech, though he did not answer questions that were hurled to him after the speech. Joining me now, 2 men who worked very closely with the Majority Leader. Both served as Senator Mitch McConnell's chief of staff at one point. Hunter Bates is now a co-chair of the public law and policy practice at Aiken Gump. And Brian McGuire is now a policy director at Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck LLP. Both of you graduates of McConnell University. In full disclosure, both of you think that the idea of a feud between the president and the Majority Leader is overblown. But, Brian, since you know the Majority Leader so well, what does he make of it when the President of the United States seems to directly criticize his leadership in the Senate?
I think the first point to make is that Leader McConnell doesn't take anything like this personally. He's very focused now, as always, on the legislative goals that he and the President shares. And so I think that's entirely what his focus is on. And as for the supposed spat that they had, I think that having worked for Leader McConnell for more than a decade, I probably heard him yell once, and it was deliberate. So he does not raise his voice in those situations, and the idea that they had a shouting match to me is just not credible.
Well, it may not have been shouting, but it seems to be pretty solid reporting that wasn't a comfortable phone call 2 weeks ago, and it was during that call that the president was critical of Senator McConnell's handling not just of Obamacare, but also of the Russia investigation and sanctions. You know, Hunter, again, based on what you know of the leader, what do you think he makes of the president's leadership style?
Look, John, what I'm going to say today is not going to drive ratings or sell newspapers, but it happens to be true. And that is that I think this entire story that the GOP legislative agenda is being derailed is completely overblown. And I think people don't really care about whether President Trump and Leader McConnell are vacationing in New Jersey or hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. What really matters here is that these 2 men agree on 95% of the Republican agenda. So I don't think the fact that tweets or tactics or timing, none of that changes the fact that at the core, these 2 men are trying to achieve the same objectives. And I think the whole notion of this conflict threatening that agenda is overblown.
Well, you know, but I'm not making it up when I do a dramatic reading right now of a statement the president just made to millions of people a short time ago. He says, let me see if I can find it here. Well, no, the president was talking. Can we put up the Mitch McConnell? If Republican Senate doesn't get rid of, no. The president went after Mitch McConnell for how he handled the debt ceiling, right? He suggested that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell didn't raise the debt limit as part of the VA. And he says now Democrats will take over, and it's a shame, he says. Could have been so easy. Now it's a mess, he says. Now it's a mess, the president says. So it's not me saying it's a mess. It's the president of the United States, Brian, suggesting that the way that Mitch McConnell has handled this is a mess.
Well, look, I appreciate that the president is anxious to get his agenda through, and so are Republicans in Congress. But the simple fact is that if you had attached the debt ceiling to the VA bill, both of them would have failed. And so I think the more constructive approach here would be to focus on the Republicans who you need to get this thing through and the Democrats, and to talk about that.
See, but you just said in a very reasoned way something I'm sure Mitch McConnell would tell the president, Mr. President, you're just flat out wrong here. If we had done what you had said, this legislation would go down. So it gets to how the president understands the way things work inside Congress. And Hunter, to that point, the president keeps on talking about the Senate changing the filibuster rules. He wants legislation to be able to pass with just 50 votes, no chance of a filibuster. And this is something you talk to anyone in the Senate, Republican leadership, any key Republican members of the House, they say this is a really bad idea.
Well, the fact of the matter is, if you change the filibuster rule, if President Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi had changed the filibuster rule for legislation, the country would look dramatically different, because President Obama would have been able to do everything that he wanted to achieve, and I think that would have been bad for the country. So I think the filibuster rule does play an important role. But to go back for just a minute about the debt ceiling tweet, again, I think the most important thing that we should see in that is that President Trump is saying that he wants the debt ceiling done. He wants it done in a way that's clean and attached to legislation that can otherwise pass. That is almost exactly what Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell have been saying. So again, we can get worked up about the fact that they have a different approach on tactics, but at the core, on the policy issues, they're in 100% agreement. And I think that's the point we have to keep coming back to. And I think when they come back in September after Labor Day, they certainly have a very busy plate. They have only 12 legislative days for both the House and the Senate are in at the same time. But the fact that they agree on what the core objectives of that period should include, I think, is the most important point.